Hey everyone, welcome to the Photo Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Morgan, here with Megan. And today we're going to be talking about our backgrounds in the photography industry and what you guys can learn from us.
Hey guys. So I'm actually going to be interviewing Morgan, and Morgan is going to be interviewing me as we were talking about getting this introductory episode out, or what should probably be a trailer. It was kind of funny. We realized that there are pieces of each other's stories that, even though we've been friends for, gosh, almost
5 years.
it's over 5 years now, we somehow still didn't know everything about each other. Shocking. So, yeah, we're going to interview each other, and I'm going to start us off, Morgan. So, why don't you tell us how and when did you get started in photography?
Yeah, so I started my photography business in 2017. I went into it right off the bat doing weddings, didn't do anything else. And I started my business because my husband and I had had a bad experience with our wedding photographer for a multitude of reasons. And I never wanted anybody else to have that same experience. And I also wanted to serve as many brides as possible because I knew that if I could serve as many brides as possible, then I was preventing others from having that same experience. And going into it, I knew from the start that I wanted a team. I knew that I was built like trying to build this empire basically so I could take a step back and be home when I wanted to be and didn't have to be gone every weekend because I knew my husband was going to work a 9 to 5. So,
Okay, so a couple questions. I think it's so interesting that you knew that you wanted to serve as many brides as possible, and that to do that you would need a team, because I don't know what your experience was, especially I guess you had just planned a wedding, so you maybe had a little more experience than some people do, but like I don't think everybody knows about associates and having multiple photographers on a team. So like, did you have a model for that, or like had you seen that out there and said that's what I want, or was this just like dreaming it up?
so I guess like you kind of need to know a little bit about my background to know like how that came about. So my degree is actually in graphic design. I have a BFA in graphic design from Omar College of Design, and so I had worked in the music industry for the last 6 months before my husband and I got married, and so I think for me it was being in that industry and seeing how everything works there that gave me the idea because when you work in the music industry, like you're under one label and you serve a multitude of brides and like each department has their own thing. Or sorry, not a multitude of brides, but a multitude of different artists. And so each department has their own function. And I saw from like working there compared to I was also freelancing at the same time, the amount of people you impact by working as a team was so much higher than just what I could do as a single person. And so I think that was really what gave me the inspiration for it. I didn't really know about associate photographers or like having a team other than like what I had seen from like having an ad agency versus like in-house and things like that. And so that's kind of like what gave me the inspiration. And then as I dug in more, I obviously learned more.
That is so fascinating. So essentially, you borrowed your business model from outside of the photography world.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about like where you are now. So that was 2017. We're recording this at the toward the end of 2024. So it's been 7 years. No,
Yep.
7. Yeah. 7.
7. Yep.
7 years. So tell us about where you are now.
Yeah, so now I have a team of photographers. We have, I think, 12 photographers and 3 videographers on our team, and we run a multi six-figure, wedding photography business, and we only do weddings. We might be branching out a little bit in the future, but mostly weddings, and yeah, so we have team all over the country and have shot weddings in I have no idea how many countries at this point and how many states, but we're up there. And so yeah, that's what we're doing now. And we have a studio manager and I handle sales for the most part, and we also have a VA that does reach outs and things like that, along with a team running our ad campaigns.
Amazing. Cool.
Mm.
And what do you think, so as people are listening to this show, not just like this episode, but in future episodes, what do you think your superpowers are that you're bringing to the podcast that maybe are like different than, since you know my background and my experience, that are different than me, but also not just me, but also than like what's out there in the industry?
I think it's the fact that I look at my photography business as a business and not a creative outlet. I didn't start it with that intention either. And I think that's, like, clear from, like, what we've talked about so far, is that I really focus on it being a business rather than just a creative outlet. Because if I wanted it to be just a creative outlet, I would have stuck with the graphic design industry and done it for fun. So I think that's the big thing, and also I think you're gonna figure out pretty quickly that if there's something in front of me that needs to be done, it's going to get done. And I think, hopefully I'm a little bit of motivation for people to, just, to get up and do it even though if it seems hard.
I love that.
Okay.
Okay.
What questions for you now?
Yeah.
Is that what we're at? Okay. Okay. So now, Megan, we're going to talk about your background and your business. And I know there's so much more to it than just your photo business, and people are going to learn that really quick. So I guess tell us a little bit about your photo business and where that started and how that all came about.
So I believe it was early 2005. A friend of mine from high school got engaged, and she was like, "Hey, you took a photo class in high school and your dad has a nice camera. Will you take engagement photos for me?" And I was like, "Definitely not." And she said, "I will feed you for free." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. I would love to take engagement photos for you." And thank goodness they did not actually end up getting married, because then those photos would be displayed somewhere. They were horrific, but that did get me using my dad's camera, honestly, in a way that I had never really thought about it. I don't think I really saw myself as particularly artistic, maybe more creative than artistic. And I just started taking the camera with me everywhere and shooting everything. This was back in the days of MySpace, so I believe I posted those photos on MySpace. I was proud of them, embarrassingly. I was proud of them, and I immediately had another friend from high school reach out and say, "Hey, my boyfriend is deployed. I would love to send him some photos for, like, just as, like, a gift. Would you be able to take those?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Great. How much do you charge?" And I thought, "Oh, shoot. I have no idea. I guess I'm a business and I have to figure that out." So I think, wildly enough, I'm pretty sure that I charged her $350 for, like, a portrait shoot. Like, that was my first ever thing. And so she paid in 2
Sounds right.
installments. And so I took photos of her, and then, kinda like the same thing, like, I also was taking photos of other friends at that point, just sort of portrait stuff, and again, posting it on MySpace, and just kinda one thing after another, like, everything just sort of fell into place, and I had a portrait business, very light, not anything crazy. I think I shot my first wedding for, again, another friend from high school. Nothing fancy or super exciting, but I wasn't sure that I really wanted to shoot weddings, but I did have some coworkers who were referring me. I did the whole, like, shoot baby birthday parties, like, all the stuff that we as photographers hate, but it was a way to make bonus money, I felt like. So I just kinda rolled with it. From there, I think it was 2009 that I kinda had the first, like, I got into some photography forum, and I started second shooting and getting leads from other photographers who, said like, "Oh, like, I'm not willing to shoot this for their budget." And so from, like, 2009 to, I wanna say, like, 2011, so 2, 3 years, I shot a ton of weddings for somewhere anywhere between $500 and $2,000. And again, it was fine because it was creative and it was fun and I wasn't relying on it for actual,
It was
like,
a break from your
income.
day job.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so great, and it was so fun. And I didn't even have to buy equipment. My dad already had all the stuff, or at least I thought that he had all the stuff. Didn't I, like, literally didn't know enough about photography. I think, we all started somewhere and, like, but my somewhere lasted a real long time.
That's so interesting because I had a totally different approach.
Well, that makes sense because you came from, from the graphic design background where you were having to deal with graphic elements that needed to be highly just well produced,
Yeah.
especially for the level that you were, like, working with artists. That was not, I was shooting backyard weddings and yeah, like the weddings that had, like, absolutely no budget at all. But I somewhere along the way, I think I went to a friend's wedding in, mm, I think it was, and I found a woman named Jasmine Star basically through this wedding, and I started following Jasmine Star. This was early days for Jasmine even, and, she we were neighbors, we were both based in Orange County, and so I started following her, and I got a lot of great business advice from her. In 2012, I basically said, "Okay," like, I actually had gone through a bunch of really hard personal stuff, and we didn't have the saying YOLO back then, but I had my YOLO moment of, "Oh my gosh, I am in this corporate life that I don't love, working in a career that I don't hate, but it certainly, like, going to work was just like that was not my jam. Working for other people was not my thing. Kind of a rule breaker, so yeah, wasn't the right thing for me." And so in 2012, I made the transition to full-time, and that went terribly. So I booked a ton of weddings, but I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't really know how to run a business at all. So I think, like a lot of photographers, I spent money on upgrading gear, buying software, a lot of stuff, sample albums, a lot of stuff that I booked teen weddings, I believe, at a bridal show a month after I left my corporate job, and, like, all that money was gone within 2 weeks. And just like so many photographers, like, I just continued to pour every penny into the business, and I say, like, business very loosely and lightly because I didn't know what I was doing. So, although I kept shooting, I and, soliciting business, in 20 spring of 2014, I realized I need something to supplement this because I am not, like, I just don't know how to run a business. I need to make more money. So I went to get a temp job and actually fell into a full-time job kind of by accident. But I thought, okay, I will give this a year. And in that year, I'm going to do everything I can to build my business up. And so it was one of the most brutal and difficult years of my life. I was in the greater LA area. So I drove, it was about an hour and a half to work, 2 hours home from work. I was there for 10 to 12 hours a day, and then I would come home and I would work on my photo business for 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on how much work I had to do, how many weddings I'd shot. I also started associate shooting at that time for a business that was local to me, and I realized that there was that I had a lot of opportunity available to me that I hadn't ever realized about or known about. I also, in that corporate job, started paying attention. So I was working for, at the time, they were a $7 billion global business. And I decided, okay, I'm going to use this as my education. And so I did that. And a year later, I was able to quit. Thank God. I didn't quite have like a full book of weddings at the time, but I finally was treating my business at that point like a business. In fact, while I was working at that company, I ended up hiring my first studio manager and my first associate photographer. So that was 2014, 2015. And it switched my brain from pursuing the art of photography to pursuing the art of business. And kind of like from there, the rest is history. It turned out that I was actually very, very good at business. I knew a lot more than I had given myself credit for. I just didn't know how to apply
One.
it.
Hold on. I think everybody needs to know your family background with business to, like, know that, like, we are all, like, severely handicapped compared to Megan because I don't know how many other people have, like, sat down with your family like I have and we're literally, like, eating pints of ice cream in your living room and talking about, like, ROIs and, like, I don't even remember what else, but, like, we're literally, talking about, like, business sales and ROIs and KPIs in the middle of, like it's, like, 9 p.m., and we have been traveling all day, and we're all sitting there with our own pints of McConnell's ice cream, and after we've eaten salad for dinner, and just, and I'm like, so just so you know, this is not what my family talks about, in family gathering. So let everybody else know
Yeah.
that background.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So, I was super blessed to grow up with a business owner for a dad, but not just that. There's kind of multiple levels to this. So, I'm actually the 4th generation of entrepreneurs in my family. My great-grandpa was on both sides. Dad, my brother and I, like, we're all entrepreneurs. I think everyone in my family has owned a business at some point. At least one. My brother and I, several. My brother and I were, like, literally, like, entrepreneurs from the age of, like, 6, 7. And my dad really did a lot to encourage this. So, kinda as you mentioned, we sat around the dinner table talking about entrepreneurship, and it would be something very simple, like, "Okay, like, if we were gonna start a business, what would we do?" And so we would, like, all settle on an idea. And then, it would be like, "Okay, well, like, how would we sell it? How much would we sell it for?" And my dad was able to teach us, really basic but important business principles, like I said, from the time we were very, very young. And so, yeah, I didn't know. I knew that that was different because I had dinner at my friends' houses and they didn't talk about that stuff. I don't know what they talked about because I was thinking about business, I think, while they were not talking or talking about something. And I had enough friends, like, in high school who were really fascinated by it that I realized, okay, we're zoo animals, fun to observe. But yeah, I didn't know. It was like one of those things where, like, I didn't know what I had until 2015 when I had just ended this year-long stint with a company that was just absolutely brutal. I didn't mention this, I, like, cried on the way to work and on the way home from work, and like I said, that was a total of, like, 3.5 hours every day, and I would just, like, get in the car and cry until I couldn't cry anymore, and then I would think about business, and I would think about what I knew, and I would think about what I had learned, and I used that time to cry, but also to develop myself and develop my mind. And again, like, I realized, "Oh, wow, I actually know a lot more. I just haven't been using it." I wasn't thinking about it in terms of how how a photography business works. And so this is a commonality that we have. I didn't have any photography business model in mind to model my business after,
Mhm,
but I did have many successful businesses in my world that could I could look at them and say, "Well, this is how they acquire clients.
mhm,
Maybe I can acquire clients that way. Well, this is how they think about marketing. Maybe I can think about marketing that way. Well, they expect this kind of ROI, and photographers don't know what ROI is, so I'm gonna model after, like, that business that's more legit." And I knew what a CEO did because my dad was a CEO, and I knew that operations was a thing because, like, I walked through the halls of an actual business all the time. And we'll talk more about, like, things that can make you an actual business another time. I actually think we're making a list of that. But I started to implement those things little by little, like having business hours and having a, like, general inbox rather than, like, a specific inbox that came to me, and, just it was a lot of little things like that, and, yeah, those things, they made all the difference. It was just kind of like tiny little building blocks. Like, it felt like they were little tiny Legos that eventually built, like, a whole freaking, like, human-sized house, and
Yeah.
it definitely didn't happen overnight, and I made lots of mistakes, but I worked up to the point where I had an associate team. I also had a second business at that point. I started a second business also in 2012 doing copywriting for photographers mostly and for other creatives. And that was super fun and started out as something that only I was doing, and then the demand for it grew to something that I couldn't do by, I think, 2015. So I was hiring team for my photo business, but I was also hiring team for the copywriting business. Yeah, and like, then I started learning how to make more with the clients that I had, and that completely changed things for us. I took a principle from that I learned from that $7 billion company, and I spent a lot of time thinking, how can I apply this to my business? Which I did, and I'm sure we'll get into the details of that in a later episode. And it was not overnight by any means, but it was very systematic. And and it also, if I'm being honest, it was really lonely because photography communities are I had a ton of photographer friends. That was like my whole world. Actually, I didn't even have local friends other than a couple local photographers.
Yeah.
But like the common photographer story was of struggle
Mhm.
and not enough means, and that wasn't my story,
Right.
and even when it was my story, it wasn't the story that I was choosing for myself. I was, like, always choosing to have a better mindset than that, choosing to believe that, my next 20 weddings were around the corner, and yeah, so, like, it was really, really lonely to be successful and to feel like I couldn't talk about that success, and so,
Yeah.
like, even now, I think there are only a handful of photographers who know what my success looked like, and that was because I didn't know how to talk about it in a way that wasn't bragging, or that didn't come across to them like it was bragging, or, like, trying to push them into doing it my way. I'm not one of those people who thinks that, like, my way is the only way, but sometimes it was maybe coming across that way when I was trying to offer advice to people. And yeah, so, like, it was really hard, and I just learned to talk to other business people about it. Like, I didn't find shelter in photographers, and yeah, so that was a really interesting time.
Yeah. I think that's where our paths crossed was which I think is kind of important for us to talk about in
Yeah,
this episode, is, like,
yeah,
how we became friends
yeah,
and, all of that. So, in August of 2019, I Megan reached out to me on Facebook because she has a coaching business, and I'm like, "Yeah, I need a coach. Like, I need somebody to help me. I'm making, like, 40,000 a year as a wedding photographer, and, like, that's not profit, like, that is what I'm making, like, that's what I'm bringing in, like, and if I want to do this full time, I need the help." And, like, that was my goal, like, I'm doing this full time, and my husband and I had just moved to Nashville December 2018. We'd come back, or I'd come back. He moved here for the first time, and I I was working a part-time job, which was like 30 hours a week, and running my business, which again was making 40,000 a year, which isn't terrible, like, when you don't know what you're doing and you grow up in a blue collar household that doesn't have these conversations. I can tell you anything you want to know about the UAW, but that's not gonna help you run a business. So
and I don't even know what the UAW is.
yeah, okay. So Megan reached out and we had a conversation, and I was like, yes, this is the right fit for me. And I had had calls with other coaches before. Like, this wasn't my first time. Like, I knew that a pitch was coming, but it felt right with Megan. And Then literally the next day, the 2 of us go and get ice cream, like, as friends because, like, at this point, like, Megan had moved to Nashville, what, like, 6 months
Like,
earlier?
no, so I moved in March. I moved, like, 3 months after you did.
Okay, yeah. So this and it's August 2019. So we hadn't been in Nashville that long. And so we go get ice cream at my favorite ice cream shop, and we're just, like, talking about, like, everything under the sun, literally nothing business. And, I mean, like, we're talking, like, autoimmune disorders, like, all sorts of
Yeah.
things. And we're, like, an hour into this, and we're like, "So we need another batch of ice cream, right?" So, like, we go grab another cup of ice cream, and I leave that meeting, and I'm like, "Hey, Matt, we have we have to do this." Like, I'm going home to my husband, like, "We have to do this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. We have to make it work." And thankfully, Megan helped us make it work. And that was the first I think, like I mean, that was the first time I'd been in a community where I didn't feel like we were always struggling, and I didn't feel like that this wasn't a real business. Even though I knew that this was a real business because, I went to art school, like, I get it. Like, this still is a real business. Sometimes it didn't feel like it, and also, like, it felt like, "Oh, I can actually support my family doing this, and these are the ways we're gonna do that." Because I had been wondering if I needed to go back to the music industry, and I knew that, like, my husband wasn't going to love me being back in the music industry with how demanding it was, because he never saw that because we were long distance when I was there. And also there were limitations on my hours because I was part-time. So, that was really when, like, we became friends. Well, that was when I became her coaching client, and then, I don't know, mid-2020 is when we, like, really became friends,
Yeah, I think
right?
it was, like, slowly developing. It wasn't that we wouldn't have been friends sooner, but, like, I traveled a bunch
Yeah, you did.
and like, COVID, and I feel like when I think about when our friendship, like, really took off, it was actually COVID. Like, when I came back with George from California. George is my dog for all y'all who don't know.
Oh, that's when I had to water all your plants for 2 months.
No, it wasn't. Okay, maybe it wasn't 2 months, was it?
That was 2 months.
Okay, so Morgan was driving from far to downtown Nashville basically to water my plant.
Once a week.
Actually, they technically weren't my plants, just to be clear. Like, I
Okay.
didn't have plants. Someone
Okay,
had left
well,
the plants.
I was watering somebody's plants in your apartment for
Right.
2 months
Yeah.
because you went to California with Riley, and then you
Mhm.
stayed,
Right.
and then you got George and drove back with George.
Yeah. Those are both dogs, just so everyone
Yeah,
knows. I don't trade boys that quickly.
nah. So, yeah, that was really when everything took off.
Yeah.
Uh, so
And
we've
then we
been
had board game nights and
ice
many,
night.
many more ice cream dates.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's where everything is come from, and we knew so this podcast kinda came about on accident. I'm sitting in Megan's living room, waiting for my dog to be done at the groomer because it's, like, around the corner from her house, so I'm just gonna camp out there for the day, and we're like, we have so much different knowledge than other people when it comes to running a photography business. What if it started with the Wedding Multiplier Toolkit.
Right.
So, if you haven't checked that out, you need to. But then it came to, like, all of our conversations are so wild because we run businesses and we don't feel like other photographers get the opportunities to have these conversations because they don't get to be surrounded by these types of people all the time. And like Megan said, like, this part of business is lonely, especially when you do see success. So we wanted this to be a place for everybody to have community and be able to talk about, like, their success and, think of it as a business rather than just a creative outlet
Yeah,
and set
exactly.
you guys up for success.
Right. And that's like, we don't have an agenda as far as like how much money you need to make or how many weddings you need to shoot or portrait sessions you need to take or like whether you need to do IPS or not or whatever. Like, I think we are aligned on we just want photographers to be able to make the living that they want. We want
That they just
that they deserve, right? And we want photographers to be equipped to have businesses that support them instead of a business that they are working for. Because absolutely no photographer I've ever met, and I've literally met, if not thousands, at least probably close to 1,000 in, however many years, nearly 20 years now. Nobody got into this thinking, I would love to work 80 hours a week for $1.53 an hour and, you know, have demanding clients who drain life out of me, have no time for my family, miss important soccer games and whatever. And it's like, no, like that is not the life. If 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 that's what photography business is, then we should all go back to working for someone else because at least, even if you're losing your soul in your job, at least you have time off and time away. And so I think we haven't really talked about this, but like, I think this podcast is really just meant to be, hey, like pick and choose from the lessons that we've learned and the experiences that we've had to just little by little make your business more what you intended it to be or more what you now know it could be. You don't have to have a team. If that sounds terrible to you, don't build a team. Maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe you won't. We are not going to try and convince you that that is the way. We are not going to try to convince you that you have to do things the IPS way. You have to use so and so's method or even that you should give up the art of it. I want you to have a business, and Morgan wants you to have a business that is completely fulfilling to you because we have had those businesses. And I think the trouble is that our this industry doesn't talk enough about being fulfilled and being well paid.
Yep.
And like you can either be a starving artist and happy that you get to produce something incredible for other people, or you can be successful and soulless. Like those are the 2 options, and Morgan and I are not either or people, we are both and people, and so, like, we think that you can keep your soul, have lots of money, have the success that you want, make it to the soccer games, travel
Mhm.
the world, like, do all the things, and we know this because that has been the experience that we've had, and so, we're not here to preach at you, we're just here to hopefully share what just the lessons that we've learned and even like the mistakes that we've made. We're pretty transparent people. We're like the real. If you don't want to hear it straight, like this is not the
Probably
podcast for you.
yeah, you probably don't wanna be with us.
But we have so much, I think we have so much kindness and empathy because we've been in those hard spots. We've been stuck over and over again. We've made so many mistakes. And our goal is just that you don't have to make the same mistakes that we make. You will make mistakes, but you just don't have to make the ones that we made.
We just wanna help you get to your goal faster. That's, like, ultimately what it comes down to. It's it's not about being perfect, but we want to help you, get to where you want to be in your business, and everybody's goals are different, and that is totally fine, and although, like, Megan and I have accidentally ended up with very similar businesses, that was not intentional. Um, I didn't model my business after her, like I mean, like you heard, I didn't meet Megan till 2019, and I knew in 2017 that I was having a team. So, if we can help you guys get to where you want to go, that's our goal. We just want and we want it to be a community too. We want it to be a place where you guys feel welcomed and you guys can share your wins. We don't want anybody to feel like they're bragging because they're telling us "Hey, I just booked 5 weddings." No, we're here to celebrate you guys too.
So I think that's a great place for us to wrap up what was supposed to be a short intro
Intro.
episode, but oops. So if this was great for you guys, please follow or subscribe, whatever it's called, in whatever podcast platform you are listening to this. We will have our first Well, I mean, this is a full episode, right? So this is episode
Right.
1. Yeah, this is a trailer. So we will be releasing episodes weekly from here on out. So whatever day this comes out, we haven't thought through this because we're imperfect action takers. So whatever day this comes out, you can look for a week from now. You will have that second episode drop in your Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I think Google has podcasts. Tell us if you're listening to it somewhere else. Who knows? And also, we would love for you to give us a rating. So make sure you follow, subscribe. Morgan mentioned the wedding multiplier toolkit. If that's something you want to check out, that link will be in the show notes, which we're totally going to have figured out. And
And also the Facebook group to join to be with more people who are like-minded.
yeah, perfect. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We look forward to winning your listenership. Is that a thing?
Oh, no.
All right. Well, we'll figure out a good sign off for the future. For now, we're just going to say bye.
Bye, guys.